I rise today to speak on a crisis that affects communities across our nation. That crisis is that of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Native American and Alaska Native women throughout the country face a murder rate 10 times that of the national average, with 84% experiencing some kind of violence in their lifetimes. In my home state of Washington, Native Americans make up about 2% of the population, but a recent report by the Washington State Patrol shows that Indigenous women account for 7% of the state's reported missing women. My congressional district in Central Washington sits at the epicenter of this crisis. In the past 5 years alone, 7 women have been murdered or have gone missing on or near the Yakama Nation reservation. These women are not just statistics in a database. They are mothers, daughters, sisters, neighbors, and friends. They are those who are missing, like 25-year-old Alilia Minthorn, or Lala as her friends called her, who was last seen in Toppenish and has been missing since May 5th. Or 31-year-old Rosenda Strong, who was last seen in Wapato on October 2nd of last year. 34-year-old Frida Gunn, who went missing in Kennewick in 2016, and 18-year-old Rosalita Longi, who was last seen in Wapato in 2015. Then there are the unsolved murders, including 23-year-old Linda Dave, whose remains were found in Toppenish in February of 2017. 31-year-old Minnie Andy, who was assaulted by an unknown assailant in Wapato and later died of her injuries in July of 2017. And 23-year-old Destiny Lloyd, who was reported missing on Christmas Day 2017, only to be found days later, murdered on the side of the road. To reiterate, Madam Speaker, these are just 7 cases from the last 5 years. There are currently 71 open cases like this in Washington State, 31 of them occurring on or near the Yakama Nation reservation. The local community has been working to tackle this crisis. Tribal and community leaders have held multiple rallies and community forums to raise awareness and demand action. The diligent reporting of the Yakama Herald Republic has highlighted the community response and activism on the ground, creating an online hub to list open cases involving missing and murdered Yakama Native women, and providing resources for the community to report disappearances. Recently passed state laws spearheaded by State Representative Gina Mossbrucker in Olympia have enhanced data collection and improved communication between tribal leaders and various state agencies. I absolutely applaud these efforts, and I'm inspired by the progress being made at the local and state level. However, this is a national problem that requires a national response. That's why I, along with my colleagues, Representatives Torres and Holland, introduced Savanna's Act. Our legislation aims to address and bring awareness to the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women at the federal level by improving coordination between federal, state, local, and tribal law enforcement agencies. The bill would develop guidelines and best practices for tribes and law enforcement agencies across the country to enhance the reporting and record-keeping of crimes against Indigenous women and improve communication between law enforcement and families of victims. Now, this bill may sound familiar. Last Congress, the Senate unanimously passed a version of Savanna's Act that stalled in the House. Representatives Torres, Holland, and I worked with tribes, advocacy groups, law enforcement, and Senators Murkowski and Cortez Masto to improve the legislation and introduce a bill that can and should be signed into law. The bill is named in honor of Savanna LaFontaine Graywind, a 22-year-old member of the Spirit Lake tribe, pregnant with her first child who was murdered in August of 2017. Her murder brought long overdue national attention to missing and murdered Indigenous women. After meeting with local families of victims, state and local law enforcement, and regional tribes, it has become clear to me that Central Washington has a unique perspective on this crisis. The stories about these women are heartbreaking. It is with these stories in mind that I have urged both House Judiciary and Natural Resources Committees to hold a field hearing on the Yakama Nation Reservation to learn firsthand how this crisis is plaguing our communities. I'm pleased to have gained the support of local tribes and the YWCA in Yakima in calling for a field hearing, and I'm eager to have committee members hear their stories as well. Thankfully, justice was served upon Savanna's murderers. We owe the same justice.
The gentleman's time has expired.
For the many murdered, missing Indigenous women. With that, Madam Speaker, I yield the balance of my time.